That was terrible.
Hello.
Hello.
Did I do that too soon?
No, you're just fine.
I love our intro.
Our intro is so fun. It's a great intro. I like it a lot. We had some help from some incredible people make it at Pleasant Productions.
Speaking of fun.
Fun. Tell me.
Oh, just the guy. The fun. We'll get into that.
We'll get into that. How are you, Ellie?
I am awesome because I just ate a cheese quesadilla and Jared
Yum.
was like kind of rushing me.
Well, I was just like, we cannot film this podcast if you are going to be... Oh, this is not mukbang.
Well, I always tell Jared, I'm like, I'm nursing. Like, I'm always eating it like the most inconvenient times.
Well, it's very convenient for you because you're like, I'm nursing and I need to eat.
Yeah.
It's not convenient for everyone else, but that doesn't matter.
Are so tired.
I'm so sorry. But we've had a good day. We've had a
great day. I feel very productive and just sometimes just change. Like sometimes the everyday like drains you, and when you change your everyday up, it's just like sparks energy.
Reinvigorates.
It is so true.
Ellie and I filmed a challenge today. Well, I challenged Ellie.
It was so fun.
And we filmed it. And you may have already seen it by the time this podcast is out. So if it is, we'll have a link to it in the show notes. But it was fun. It was something different. We did some challenges while we went on the cruise. But we haven't done a ton of challenges. But I really liked it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Because it put you on the spot.
I had to do my makeup only at stoplights. It was fun. And
you only had 5.
Yeah. And I did it.
Mm-hmm. It was
Spoiler
incredible. You guys got to go check it out if you haven't seen it already. But I think we might do some more of those things because it's just like, I think it puts us out of the comfort zone of talking to the camera, and it's more just reactive, quick.
It's fun.
Funny, you know? So I thought that was a lot of fun to do. And I'm waiting for your challenge to me.
So what do you want to do today? What do you want to talk about?
Well, I figured we would use the Anchor app. So for those of you who don't know, we use Anchor to distribute the podcast to all of the different places you can listen to, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify. And there's some really cool tools that they have at our disposal that we all can use together. And one of them is questions. You guys can submit questions to us on the Anchor app, and it will record your voice. You submit it to us, we listen to it, and we answer the question.
It's fun.
It is fun. And as I was going through some of these questions, I was like, oh, this is a good one that I think we can make an entire podcast about.
And when Jared first told me about the subject that we're going to talk about, I was like, don't talk anymore. I was like, because I want on the podcast for it to be very like, I don't want to pre-talk about stuff. I just want to know and like talk
and discuss on the podcast.
Yeah. So I am still a little confused on how it is, but Jared is going to explain.
So let us listen to the question from Jenny and Alex.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Jenny and Alex here at jennyandalex.fun. Woo! Hey, we've been following you guys on your new podcast since the very beginning, 5 days ago. It's crazy.
I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome, though. You guys are doing a really good job. We have a question for you. We are recording an episode for our show about parenting. And we want to know, you guys have just had a child, and do you have a philosophy on how you will parent your child? And for us, we heard this Hidden Brain podcast recently
from NPR,
about dueling philosophies on parenting. One of them was a carpenter philosophy. One of them was a gardener philosophy. And we want to know, do you guys have your own philosophy of how you're going to parent your child? So we love the show. Keep up the good work. Can't wait to hear what's next, and let us know what you think. Bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you, Jenny and Alex. I think they are fun.
Yes. I think this is fun listening to their voices rather than just like a comment. Before we get into it, can I maybe say just a little bit about kind of like what we've talked about with our kids?
Well, I think what we should do first is kind of explain what the philosophy or what we interpret that philosophy to be.
Okay.
And then you can go into that. So a gardener philosophy versus a carpenter philosophy. The way I interpret that to be, we haven't done any research on this.
Why?
Because you just said we want to do the podcast.
Should we look it up and make sure we're right?
Well, yeah, maybe I'll look it up as
Okay,
I'm
let's
talking.
look it up. Well,
Go ahead, Ellie.
as you look it up, I'll just tell them just what came to my mind when they first asked. At least right now, how Jared and I have parented and what's really worked well is no matter what direction we take, we are on the same page.
I knew you were going to say
Like, and as we were dating and as we got married and we're trying to have kids, Jared and I are huge into talking and communicating. And we always, and even now, we're like, okay, what would you do if this happens? How will we react when this happens? How do you feel about taking it this direction versus this direction? Like, we always are talking about scenarios. And that's a lot how my parents raised us, is we always heard them at the dinner table talking about scenarios and what they expected of us. Anyway, so Jared and I are just very on the same page. So if Jackson comes to me and asks something and I say no, and he goes to Jared, his answer is going to be no.
Yeah.
If he happens to go to us separately and we don't know about it, and one said yes and one said no, and later we found out about it, we both sit down with him and say, you went to mom and mom said no, and then you came to me. That's not okay. If mom's answer is no, my answer is no. Or if my answer is yes, Jared's is yes,
Right.
So we're very on the same page. And I feel like that overall is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's gone from the very beginning, from the last podcast that we talked about, when we talked forever, getting to know each other. That was something that we agreed on from the very beginning, is we need to be on the same page for as many things as humanly possible.
And there has been times where Jared thinks like, oh yeah, it's okay if he does this, and I don't think that's okay. And so that means Jared and I need to compromise.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been times where it's like, I'm like, okay, I'll lighten up, and like, okay, you do your thing.
And vice versa. I'm
Yes.
so like, no, no, no. And you're like, come on. And then we'll compromise.
Yeah.
Compromise is a huge thing for us
Yeah.
in communication.
So that alone is important. So what did you pull up?
So it kind of goes along with what I thought. So it says there are two kind of parents in modern America, the gardener and the carpenter. The carpenter thinks that his or her child can be molded. The idea is that if you do just the right things, get the right skills, read the right books, you're going to be able to shape your child into a particular kind of adult. The gardener, on the other hand, is less concerned about controlling who the child will become and instead provides a protected space to explore. The style is all about creating a rich, nurturant, but also variable, diverse, dynamic ecosystem. So really, the carpenter, can mold their child into what they want, and the gardener lets the child blossom into what they want. More or less, I think.
When Jared
providing
first told me
different
this,
experiences.
he did tell me this a little bit, and I automatically thought, I'm a carpenter. And I feel like I'm that way because I'm constantly correcting. Like I'm that. I mean, I would hope, I think every parent is, because it's like I'm teaching him,
Right.
You're 4 years old. We don't say those things. We say this. We don't do that. We don't hit your brother. We be nice. And
Yeah.
I'm constantly like, it's draining, like constantly just correcting and guiding my kids on how they should behave. So I thought I was a carpenter, but as you're reading it, I feel like I'm a gardener.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because I do create a rich, nurturing environment for them to be. Like when we're outside, I try my best not to say no or correct. I want, when they're outside, it's I want them to explore and do their thing.
You want them to be themselves while they're playing.
Yeah, and and inside too, but it's specifically when I'm outside, I try and make that point. But I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm a mix.
Well, I think, yeah. Well, and maybe that's true, and maybe there's no right answer. But I feel like when you're outside with the kids, and they're playing and everything, I'm a little bit more reserved and I don't know if I would let them do that. I don't know if I would let them climb on that. I don't know.
And I'm let them
Let
be,
them do
let
it.
them learn.
But I don't know. I feel like sometimes our kids are older than I think they are, and they can handle themselves a little bit more than I think. And I worry about that I'm like, oh man. I mean, Jackson is only 4 years old, but
He acts like he's 8.
He can handle himself like an 8-year-old. And it blows my mind every time. He's like, Dad, watch me do a backflip. What? Sorry, you are not doing a backflip. We go to the trampoline park and he does a backflip. I'm spotting him, but he does it. He's just like, and because he has the body control, he can do those kinds of things.
But then as I'm looking at the carpenter, how it says you like shape your kid, you have the right skills, the right books. When it says you were like, molding your child, I don't care what my child becomes. I just want him to be kind.
Mm-hmm. And happy?
Yeah, I just want my kids to be kind. Like that is my number one goal. Like you be respectful and nice to other people. And that's why I'm constantly correcting,
Yeah. And
to be a well-behaved, nice.
Yeah. And I could definitely see the way we've talked in the past, how you might initially want to be a carpenter and versus a gardener. But it's kind of true as you look into it, you're like, well, maybe a little bit of both. I don't think I'm 100% one or the other. Yeah. I feel like I want to help my child become the best person that they can be. And that is with letting them figure things out on their own. That is with putting them in places where they have to figure things out. They have to do things on their own. They have to go through these experiences. I love traveling with the kids because it puts them in totally different environments than they're used to. And they have to think and they have to figure things out. But at the same time, it's like, if I can put the kids in that situation, does that make it a carpenter?
I really like traveling with the kids.
I love it.
I think that some people are like, oh, what? I feel like it has taught, I'm the worst. It's time for a nap. I was up at 4, 5, 6. I like traveling with the kids because I feel like it has taught them how to behave.
Yeah.
Like in public. Mm-hmm. Like there is no choice. Like you are following me.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things, like let's go to the carpenter, for example. Let's say you're like, I want my child to be a engineer or a surgeon. Like that's what I want my child to be. And I'm going to do those things to put guide them the path to make that happen for my child. Is that something that you would do? Because
No.
I feel like that's something that a carpenter would do.
No.
Yeah. And I don't think I would do that. And I don't think my parents would do that to me too.
And I don't think my parents did that either.
Yeah. I'm not sure how severe that is. That kind of seems, I know some people do that.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Like dancing or music, But then again, it's like Jackson loves rocks. I will go out of my way to find something that will, because that's an interest to him.
Yeah, but that's something that
situation.
he chose.
Yes.
So I mean, it's hard because it's like, I think we blend those lines really, really well. And I feel like we provide different experiences for the kids based on their interests, something that they have decided they wanted to do, but also kind of like kept them on, if this was like a plain area and like the garden or the carpenter is like in the middle on the line, our line is just like extended out. We're like, yeah, let's do this. But we also have to make sure that we follow some of these rules that parents and society have set out for us. You know
what?
Like you don't pick on kids. You be nice to people,
Yeah.
like those kinds of things. And I think my parents did a really great job at allowing me to do the things that I wanted, and they helped with that. I mean, we didn't have a ton of money. We didn't have the opportunity to do a lot of things, but pole vaulting, for example, that's something that I really, really wanted to do, and they helped me achieve that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's totally gardener-like.
Yeah.
And we may be getting these interpretations
wrong.
wrong.
I know. You can interpret this so many ways. Someone might be listening and be like,
what the heck are they talking about?
Yeah, I literally am kind of I thought initially like I'm a carpenter because I expect things and I expect it to be done the way I am wanting it to be done and the way I'm teaching it to be done. And that's how I've been parenting. So that's why I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a carpenter. But as we're talking, I really do feel like I'm more of a gardener, but I'm just trying to trying to guide them.
Yeah,
But like, and we're raising them differently. Jackson, we raised Calvin completely different. Like, yeah, we have the same like
basic rules.
Yeah, the basic rules for both of them, but like Calvin's personality is so different. You know, I discipline each child differently because of their personalities and what I feel
works best for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that goes just between kids, between other families. Like, we hang out with Bonnie and Joel a lot, and they would discipline their kids differently based on their individual kids and differently than how we would do it. Same thing with all of the other kids, because they're different. And I feel like that's a gardener approach. You take things differently with the child, but I don't know, maybe we're thinking of it too much.
Is this maybe the worst podcast?
Let me read this.
We don't know how to parent. We're doing the best we can.
Well, and let me say this. There are so many right ways to raise and parent a child. There's so many right ways. You know, there's not just one. There's so many different right ways. So let's read this again. The carpenter thinks that his or her child can be molded. The idea is that if you just do the right things, get the right skills, read the right books, you're going to be able to shape your child into a particular kind of adult.
Does that mean shape them into like a career, or shape them into the person, like personality wise?
Well, I think it's skills.
Because
books.
I feel like, gosh, that's me. Like I am shaping and molding them to who I want them to be. I want them.
But I don't think we're doing it to the extent that a carpenter would.
Okay.
A carpenter takes a piece of wood and they make it exactly what they want.
They're molding it.
They make it exactly how they want. So you're like, my child is going to be a doctor. By gosh, golly darn it, he's going to go to medical school and he's going to be a doctor. Okay. And I'm going to train him the way. Carpenter. Yeah.
People that are listening are probably like, Ellie. Okay, gardener.
You're not so much a gardener as you are a flip-flopper. No, and then the gardener, on the other hand, is less concerned about controlling who the child will become and instead provides a protected space to explore. The style is all about creating rich, nurturant, but also variable, diverse, dynamic ecosystem. So it's like you plant the seed and you let the child blossom and grow into what they want. And I think it just goes back again to, I think it's a mixture of both. I feel like we do a pretty good job at both. We're right in the middle. What is...
well, is there more that it says?
Well, yeah, but I don't want to read it.
Well, I know, but just like roughly, like just skim it a little.
Well, so we're so concerned about how these children are going to turn out that we're unwilling to give them the autonomy that they need to be able to take risks and go out and explore the world.
See, and I'm not. Like, it's like, I'm not concerned. Like...
Yeah.
So what would that fall under?
I feel like that's a gardener.
Okay.
So it's like, I
feel like Jared and I are probably more of the gardener type.
I think we have a very basic carpenter aspect, but a more gardener view. Like, I want my kids to enjoy the things that they want to do. I want them to be able to experience the things that they would like to. But if it's not something that I feel like will better them, I don't know. Like, I don't want them doing terrible things. So if they're going to do those terrible things, then I'm going to step in and I'm going to be like, oh, we're shaving that piece off because I'm a carpenter, baby. We're going to take that
Not
wood.
in my household.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing. And I think my parents did the same exact thing. I was the only boy in my family that really wanted to like get deep into sports. I played football, I played baseball, I pole vaulted and everything. None of my other brothers did that. And it's not because my parents wouldn't let them, it's because they didn't want to. And I feel like, they're letting them grow as they want. Mm-hmm. Did you see any of that in your family? Like, what was it like for your childhood? Did your parents say, this is what you're doing? You're taking piano lessons. You're not doing sports. You are doing this. What was it like? My
parents didn't ever say like, you can't do this, you can't do this. I think just they did have us all in piano lessons, and I don't know if it's because I was scared. It's like there was one time that I wanted to quit and I would never quit. And I don't know if it's because I was scared to say I want to quit, or if it was me respecting them, knowing they're spending a lot of money So I don't know. It was probably a little mix of both. So there's that. We did piano lessons, but they didn't really offer for us to do anything else. I think that Bonnie probably did the most activities. Like she was, she signed up for the pageants, and she did the plays, and she did softball. But that wasn't because my parents even offered it. It's because Bonnie went out on her own and tried to do those. Mm-hmm. And my parents were like, well, yeah, if you're going to do the work to go out and do something, I will support you. But my parents aren't going to sit down with 5 kids and put us in different things just so we have experiences. That's not how they raised us. So that was, if I wanted to do something, I needed to go out and I needed to work for it and to do it. So that's why I didn't do much, is because I just didn't want to and I didn't care.
So would you say your parents are more carpenters or gardeners?
I would say my parents are probably more gardeners.
I think they're more carpenters in that sense, because they personally are not going out and saying,
if they were carpenters, they would look at me and say, I want you in this and this and this and this. But because they sat back, my parents weren't hands-on parents. Mm-hmm. They sat back and they watched their kids grow.
But they
helped guide us into who we are.
Carpenter.
They helped guide us.
Yeah, carpenter.
I feel like that's a gardener. I feel like if they were a carpenter, they would be making us do that stuff.
Well, and that's kind of like where the guiding comes in.
But that's how I'm as a parent. I'm not necessarily the most hands-on parent. I like to sit back and watch my kids blossom, but I'm there to guide them because I'm the parent.
Maybe I'm misinterpreting this.
This is deep.
This is deep. I feel like ultimately Ellie and I have a good mixture of it, because we do want the kids to go through these different experiences, to grow, mentally, emotionally, and have these different things that they wouldn't get just hanging out at our house. That's why we do like to travel. But I want them to do those things on their own too. I want Jackson and Calvin and Tommy to explore and to find out things on their own. But I've also been always learn from other people's mistakes, Use
other people as an example of what you want to do and not want to do.
Yeah.
You feel like my parents were more carpenters, but that's how your parents raised you. They kind of sat back. They didn't push the siblings into. They had too many kids to even. Well, same with my parents. It's that's just so much energy and work. So you have 8 kids, 5 kids.
Do you think that if you have less kids, you're more likely to become a carpenter than you would be a gardener, just by default, because you don't have the time or energy or money to facilitate the carpenter aspect of it?
A little, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. So, I mean, maybe I misinterpreted that based on what I know of what you've told me about your parents growing up and all of that stuff.
My parents were strict. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Jared and I are very strict. I feel like the basics. As far as behavior, Jared and I are just as strict as probably my parents were.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You don't be yes, 2-year-olds can be sassy, but I'm not laughing at it. We're constantly just correcting, and you can see in our kids how they act to other adults and how they act. Yes, they're kids, but they're very well behaved.
It was so funny. Yesterday, my parents were over at our house, and I
was almost embarrassed.
We were playing, and the kids were being kind of rowdy. It was past their bedtime.
No, I put them to bed, and they got out of bed.
Yeah.
And they were playing.
And Ellie said, Jackson, get back in your bed.
And I kind of yelled it from the top of the stairs.
Yeah. Jackson very politely said, yes, mother. And my parents
we all died.
Busted up laughing because Jackson doesn't say
mother.
Yes, mother.
I've never told him to say mother.
We
ever.
never say your mother wants to talk to you.
I do tell him to say I want to hear you say yes. Say yes so I can know that you
understand
me.
What I'm saying, and yeah.
But not mother.
I don't know where he got that, but it was the funniest thing. And we looked at my parents and I was like, I promise we don't
drill that into them. But you know what I do like? Cullen and Katie were talking about, or not Cullen and Katie, Don't Tell Mom podcast. They were saying
they
Whose
were
podcast
raised.
is that?
Cullen and his sister.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They were saying that they were raised like, you say to other people, yes, sir. No, ma'am. You know, those things. And I was like, I like the politeness of that, but I don't want to like drill it into them.
Well, and he doesn't have to say yes, sir, to people, but
He did to his dad. He had to.
Well, I know, but like for my kids, I don't want my parents to, or I don't want my kids to have to say like, sir and ma'am, but like I do have them look at my eyes and acknowledge by
Yes.
saying yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. We should be parents. But yeah, I mean, like I said before, I don't think there's 100% wrong way and 100%
we
right
could
way.
totally
No, there is hold on. There is 100% wrong way to raise a child. There is, but those are like the extremes.
No abuse.
Yeah, when we're talking about things like in this, I don't think there's like, I think a good mixture of it is a great way, but we're not going to tell other people how to parent, just how we've been doing it.
Yeah. I do know that there are parents, and maybe we are carpenters, because I know of other parents that as even a 2-year-old, they don't do that correcting. And they just, well, that's their choice, and they're doing that. And they have to learn from their mistake. And they just let the kids do whatever they want. And it's like, well, I'm just going to watch them, and they're going to have to learn. Mm-hmm. And I, as a parent, don't feel like that's right for me, because I'm the parent and they're 2 and they don't know better, and I'm trying to teach them.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so maybe we are carpenters because we are like molding them and correcting, and you know, I don't know.
There was a law that I think just passed in Utah called free range parenting, where
I'll parent however I want.
you are allowed to let your kid just be, and you know, they can do, I don't want to say do whatever they want. I'll have to look into it a little bit more, but basically the idea is the kids will have to suffer the consequences that they get into when they're out, like toddlers. Like if they get hurt, the parent isn't responsible or get in trouble for those kinds of things. It's kind of just exactly how it sounds. Free range parenting.
Should have done our research before.
See, I told you I wanted to do a little bit of it. It's okay. But on the flip side of that, you have helicopter parenting, where parents are constantly over their child, making sure they never get hurt, making sure they never fall over, they never put anything in their mouth.
Yeah.
You know, those kinds of things.
And right there, I feel like I'm a mix. When I am outside, or when the kids are just playing inside, I don't helicopter them. They're on their own and they're playing. It's when we're at the dinner table, or when I'm with them and we're getting dressed, and like certain situations where it's like I am constantly on them, because it's like, no, like we don't do that. We don't do that. We don't, or we do this, we do this. I try not to say no. And I know on the podcast right now I am saying like, oh no. When I'm with the kids, I try not to, and I try and say, this is how we act. This is how we behave. Mm-hmm. Jackson, is that a nice thing or a not a nice thing? I try and parent that way, not like, no, because then that's not teaching them anything by just saying no.
Yeah. One thing that I've really, really tried hard to do throughout our kids' life is not impulse reactions like, no, that's bad. Is to get down to their eye level and explain to them why something is the way that it is and why something isn't the way that it is. And I feel like that's helped Jackson a lot. He's asking a lot of questions because of that kind of stuff before he gets into a situation. And because I don't want to just be impulsive and react off of emotion. I want to explain, because Jackson's at the point now where he can understand these things.
Jared and I have talked a lot that growing up, and I think this could be with a lot of people, not just like our parents, but growing up, we didn't know why we were in trouble.
Yeah. We
didn't know why mom and dad were upset. And it wasn't even us probably half the time that they were upset. Maybe it was their job or their stresses or whatever.
And it just compounded on each other.
And Jared and I have talked a lot about that, and how we want to communicate with our kids. And we try and explain to our kids a lot. Like sometimes I'm frustrated and naturally you do take it out on people around you. And I've tried to say, Jackson, I'm feeding the baby. I don't feel well and I can't do that right now. Like I try and explain to him why I'm saying no.
Rather than just get off the bed and leave me alone.
Yeah, it's like Jackson, and I try and explain to him. Or when they get in trouble, rather than just like, go stand in a corner. It's like, I always, and I give them warnings. It's like, I don't want to put you in a corner. If you do that again, I'm going to do it. Jackson, I do not want to do this. And then he does it and I have to. And I put him in a corner. I say, why am I putting you in the corner? And I make him tell me what he did to go in the corner. And then after he's done, I tell him,
we talk about
again, what you did and what I expect. And then we're done, So we try and let them know why they're in trouble. Because sometimes it's like, why is mom yelling?
And that's something that I remembered as a kid a lot is like, what did I do wrong? Why is dad upset at me? And sometimes I definitely knew what I did wrong,
Yeah.
But I think the explanation is a huge thing.
And that's tiring.
Especially
tiring,
when you're
constantly talking and
emotional about something, you're at your wit's end. And then you have to sit down and explain. And I think it's really important to explain it calmly so they understand. And that's in the other thing. The other side of it is like, I've always tried to tell Jackson in a very like calm voice, like, I am upset. I am mad. And this is why. Do you understand why that would make me mad? And do you understand, why, what caused you to do that made me mad?
I could be wrong, but I feel like because maybe it's our kids' personalities. I'm not trying to say we're good parents.
I think that has a huge part to do with it.
Their personalities are very good. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, this has worked good. I feel like because we have done that and communicated to them why they're in trouble a lot, that they have been able to have compassion, more compassion than most toddlers. Like what 4-year-old...
Jackson astounds me.
Jackson, and Calvin is this way too.
He's starting to do this a lot.
But he just understands adults' emotions. Like one time he was at Aunt Bonnie's house and I don't even think Bonnie was mad. She just like wasn't talking and she was like getting lunch ready. And Jackson's like, "Are you mad, Aunt Bonnie?" Of course he was looking at her. He was looking at her body language. And it's like, what? Like what?
What kid thinks to ask?
He doesn't like when we're upset. Like he knows when we're upset and he's like, "Are you mad?" And then we explain if we are and
then he'll come in and say, "How was your sleep?"
Yeah.
He is so concerned about others' well-being. It just blows my mind. And Calvin's picking up on the same thing.
And maybe it's their personalities. Maybe it's because of the way we've tried to communicate.
I'm
maybe
really
it's
hoping
both.
it's from us.
Maybe. But this is just a podcast of what's worked for us. There are some kids' personalities that you can do that with. It just doesn't get through to them. So I don't know.
Well, like we said, some things work for some kids and they don't for others. So and you have to find out what works. And what it all comes back down to, the moral of the story, is being able to communicate, especially with your spouse. Make sure you communicate with your spouse. No, make sure you communicate with your spouse and make sure that you're on the same page, whether it's discipline, whether it's, gardening or carpentry. If you're not on the same page, your kids will know that. And they will use that against you. And they will come down to defeat you.
It's true.
I say that jokingly, but it's also...
so true.
It's... Oh, Siri, what are you doing? But it's also true. Like, kids are smarter than we give them credit for. And they find out those things. Like, Jackson and Calvin will sneak into the pantry because we left the door open a little crack and they'll manipulate it. Oh, did you get a cookie? No, I didn't get a cookie. It's just like they're smarter than we think. And if they know that you're on the same page, they won't go to one and say, "Oh, mom said no, I'm going to go ask dad," because sometimes dad says yes more than mom. If we're on the same page, that doesn't happen. I did that. I would ask my dad something and he would say, "No." Okay, well, I'm going to go ask my mom instead. And mom, would? Oh, yeah, sometimes if I really wanted something. Sometimes they would talk about it. But it wasn't it wasn't ever like huge stuff to
naturally I would go to mom and ask for stuff because naturally she would say yes more. I mean, it's like I wouldn't go ask my dad if I could go play with my friend because he'd probably be like, oh, go pick up the dog poop. It's like he would like send me to go do a chore.
Yeah.
But like if it was like a bit like, Mom, can I buy this shirt? No. Dad, can I buy this shirt? Yeah. It's like, no, that's not how it works,
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff that I asked never involved money because we just didn't, it was not something that we
well,
really
not
went
even
for.
buying, but just,
Yeah.
My
mom definitely said yes more than my dad.
One time I got in big trouble. I was like 9 years old and we had a blue play pool. And if you watch our videos, you'll see that, the grandkids playing. And I asked, I think my dad said yes. I think I asked my mom and she said no, probably because we just did yard work. She didn't want a burnt spot on the grass. No, Ellie, don't get the pool out. And I went and asked my dad and my dad didn't know that I had already asked mom. And he was outside and he's like, yeah. So I went to go get it out and they both found out and I was in deep, deep shiz. Like it was not pretty.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big lessons that I remember it there. And they both were like, if mom says no, I say no, don't ask. Like that's not okay to go behind our backs, and I got in big trouble. So I remember that.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, communication, being on the same page is a goal that Ellie and I have had for a long time. And some of the things that we talked about before we were married, before we had kids, we talked about those things.
I think that's important to talk about situations before they happen. It's going to happen. Our kids are going to sneak out. Our kids are going to misbehave. Our kids are going to say no to us. Like, am I saying going really annoying?
No. Going on.
They will do it. It's not a matter of us like disciplining them or being a carpenter parent or whatever and making them the way they are. It's like they will. We're here to support and guide.
Yeah. The point where hopefully they don't.
But the point,
they realize that it's not a good decision.
The point of it is Jared and I need to talk about those situations before they happen so that we both can react the same way and make it a good environment for our kids and not have it be so chaotic. I mean, I had friends growing up that their parents were on the same page. I had friends growing up that their parents weren't. And you could totally feel it when you were in the home. Mm-hmm. I feel like my friends really liked coming over to my house because it was just like a calm.
Your parents were on the same page.
The whole household runs smoother. No one has a perfect life. My parents probably argued. They really didn't fight much, at least in front of us. But I did witness several disagreements that they talked through. But
and let's clarify. You're not always going to be 100% on the same page for everything at that exact time. That's why one parent said yes to one thing and one parent said, take that with a little grain of salt. But it's like the big things, they're on the same page.
Dating before 16.
Mm-hmm. That's a rule. I mean, that's something for us.
Some parents don't think it's a big deal if their daughters go in their friends of boys' bedrooms. Is that a big deal? Probably not to a lot of parents. That was a big deal to my parents. Mm-hmm. Like stuff like that Jared and I have talked about. What time will they be home on prom? Do you really care if they're home at midnight? We just talked
about that like last month.
Do you care if our kids are home at midnight? I don't care if they're home at midnight. They can come home it's prom. Have fun.
My family's rule was on dance nights like that, you could stay out till 1. But on the weekends in like high school and stuff, curfew was midnight. Yeah.
And I never had a curfew. It was based on what they felt at the moment. It was, be home by 9. I want to see you. I want to see you home by midnight. It depended on what we were doing, who we were with, and how they felt. There were some times my parents said no just to say no because I think they were just wanted to say no.
The authority.
I don't know if some people. will think that's weird, but like I can see that. Like sometimes Jackson wants to play with the neighbor friends, and most of the time I say yes. But there's times where it's like I just want you home. So no, I don't want you out.
Well, and you have to take more than just the question into consideration. You have to think about what have we done today? What are we going
to be doing this weekend?
Yeah. What is the emotion of the room? What is the environment like right now? Are things really stressed? Would having Jackson be gone
alleviate some,
or would it make it worse? Mm-hmm. So there's all those things that they have to consider, and I'm sure that's what your parents did.
Yeah. Jackson and Jared just got back from a weekend camp out, and they had so much fun. But,
it was such
But
a
when
blast.
Jackson got home, he goes, can I watch TV? And I was like, absolutely not. Like, you just went on a camp out. You had so much fun.
Talk to me about your camp out. Don't go watch TV.
Yeah. And you just had like a 2 days without TV. Like, and I want to continue that. Like, we don't need to watch TV.
Right. And he was, he was good about it. And he
didn't love it at first.
No, he didn't. But he
But he was good.
It was quick. It was quick. And guess what? This morning, did they ask to watch TV?
Nope. I told him I hid the remotes. I said I'm hiding the remotes. You're not watching.
Well, the thing is, you don't know is the remote is downstairs.
Where?
And it's right on next to the TV.
I told Jared to hide it.
They chose not to watch TV.
I told you to hide it.
Yep. Well, I trusted Jackson. I'm a gardener.
I don't.
Ellie. I'm a gardener. So I mean, that's a really long-winded answer, but I think it's fun to communicate with Ellie about this in a live setting where we don't know exactly what the other person's going to say, but because of the time that we have spent with each other, we kind of have an idea and we are kind of on the same page. Thank you for submitting the question.
Yes.
It was wonderful.
You'll have to give us a response if we even did that.
Yeah.
Even somewhat.
let's do this. Why don't you guys use the hashtag on Twitter or Instagram, hashtag Ellie and Jared podcast, hashtag Ellie and Jared podcast for any like comments or anything related to what we've talked about now and in the past.
That's a good idea. It would be fun to do a Q&A of the Ellie and Jared podcast Q&A.
You know what you can do is you can submit voice questions through the Anchor app and we can do a Q&A.
Hey, we're going to do that sometime.
No, we totally will. We'll do a Q&A podcast one of these days. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in with us again.
Thanks
we
for
appreciate
the question. That was good.
The questions and all of the positive reviews. I mean, you guys are just awesome taking the time to do that for us. It means a lot, and it really does help the podcast grow and helps us a lot too. So with that being said,
and I love doing this.
It's
I just
so
want to
fun.
say, like last night, Jared and I, we filmed the how we met or our love story. And normally, if Jared asks me to do anything like at 9 o'clock at night, I'm like, no,
I am going to bed.
because I'm like, I'm done for the day, just like emotionally spent,
Yeah.
And it's like, let's like watch a show and like unwind or something. But like, I was so excited to film the podcast just because like I really enjoy sitting here with Jared.
yeah,
Like, I like that it's just us. We're just talking about whatever we want.
this is us.
Well, yeah, it's just a different part of us, and I really like that.
It's a different medium. It's a different format.
I like
than we've
it.
ever been done before, and it's great, and I love it. So,
But now I have to go nurse my baby.
yeah.
So that is that.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you, or you'll hear us, or something like that next time.
Bye.
Bye.